denied entry to a luxury restaurant due to appearing out of place. The following day, a black SUV arrived, and no one anticipated who emerged. Charlotte's son was exhibiting his characteristic behavior in early spring, brilliant, somewhat showy, reflecting off every glass building downtown. Ideal weather for finalizing a deal. Cassandra Belton had recently concluded a walkthrough of a young couple's first home, a small three-bedroom with creaky floors and considerable potential. She found them appealing, these newlyweds, diligent individuals who still embraced the idea of constructing things from the foundations. She recognized aspects of herself within them. At 52, Cassandra had accomplished precisely that, establishing something from nothing. Without inherited wealth, she took no easy routes. Instead, she relied on time, perseverance, and a determination to continue. She wasn't ostentatious. Such displays weren't necessary for her. Her self-assurance manifested in her demeanor, in how she occupied silence in a room without needing to assert control. Following the showing, she drove 5 minutes to Le Mistral, a high-end restaurant on Tryon Street. She hadn't intended to dine there. It simply occurred to her as she stopped at the last traffic light. Indulge yourself, Cass, you deserve it. She parked her Lexus, glanced at her phone, and exited the vehicle. She wore no blazer, only a crisp white tee tucked into tailored dark jeans and gray suede flats. Her hair was pulled back in a low bun, and she wore no makeup aside from gloss. The ensemble presented a polished and sophisticated aesthetic, suitable for both a casual cafe and a formal boardroom setting. The hostess provided a brief assessment, offered a rehearsed smile, and escorted her to a table for two situated by the window. The lunchtime rush hadn't begun. Cassandra reviewed the menu, already anticipating the grilled salmon with couscous. However, even before her water was served, he arrived. He seemed to be around 38 years old, with a strong jawline and slick-back hair and an excessive amount of cologne. His expression featured a smile that seemed to mask something deeper. "Ma'am," he said, approaching her table as if he'd practiced, "I'm afraid we have a dress code here." Cassandra looked up slowly. "Excuse me? The restaurant requires a particular standard. Our guests generally appreciate a more refined appearance." She blinked. "I'm wearing clean clothes, I smell like spring, and I just closed a $500,000 sale 2 blocks from here. I'd say I'm pretty refined." A pause. His smile became less relaxed. "We've received complaints." She tilted her head. Whose concerns were these? He looked toward the front desk, then back to her. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." There was no disturbance. Cassandra didn't raise her voice. She didn't weep. She posed a single question. Calmly, steadily. "Is it my clothes? Or is it my skin?" He didn't respond. Instead, he indicated toward security. A young man, clearly feeling awkward, approached and in a hushed tone requested that she collect her belongings. She rose, retrieved her purse, and exited. A heavy silence followed her every movement. Outside, she settled into her car, closed the door, and stared straight ahead for a significant period. She made no calls and created no videos. However, someone else did. A woman, seated in a corner booth near the bar, had observed the entire incident, recorded it, and uploaded it online, tagging the restaurant and local news outlets, along with numerous other accounts. By sundown, the video had accumulated 230,000 views. By midnight, it reached 2.3 million. Cassandra's phone began to receive numerous notifications. Her assistant, her nephew, clients, even someone from the Charlotte Observer had tried to reach her. But she didn't answer, because Cassandra wasn't going to react. She was going to respond. And those are two very different things. By the time the sun rose over Charlotte the next morning, Le Mistral had a problem. Not a small, quiet problem they could handle with a quick direct message or a vague apology. No, this was national. This was loud. The situation escalated to the point where legal counsel and public relations professionals were joining early morning Zoom meetings, even before their coffee was finished. The video itself was brief, just 37 seconds in length. It began with a composed black woman seated near a window, looking down at her menu. The restaurant appeared almost deserted. A quiet clinking of silverware could be heard in the background, along with the gentle sound of soft jazz. Then, he appeared, the manager. He approached as if offering a beverage, but his body language was inappropriate. His voice was understated and excessively courteous. There was a strange formality, the kind people adopt when they feel they've made a mistake but still want to maintain composure. The viewer didn't hear everything that was said, but they understood enough. Phrases like "we have a dress code" and "concern skew to leave" were audible. The camera subtly shifted, revealing Cassandra rising. She remained silent, simply gathering her purse. Then a single quiet sentence hung in the air. "Is it my clothes? Or is it my skin?" That was the pivotal moment. The entire comment section paused, replaying the scene and watching it again. That statement resonated unexpectedly with audiences. It wasn't delivered with raised voices. It wasn't a formal address, simply a question. Yet it had a powerful impact. Initially, Twitter reacted strongly. Subsequently, TikTok followed suit. Facebook then saw a wave of lengthy posts from individuals who had similar experiences. Gradually, people began investigating. Who was this woman? Why hadn't she previously spoken out? It emerged that Cassandra Belton wasn't just an ordinary customer. People started linking pieces of information together. She consistently ranked among the leading Black real estate brokers in Mecklenburg County. Last year, she was highlighted in Charlotte Real Estate Weekly. A quiet professional, she maintained a record free of controversy and sensationalism, building a career on consistent success and a reputation for ethical conduct. Several former clients shared their experiences. One recounted how she assisted her mother in purchasing a first home following the loss of her father. Another shared that she hadn't been charged the full commission, with the broker stating her desire to provide support. A third client also wrote, "Ms. Belton assisted me in resolving a difficult mortgage situation. She was invaluable. I consider her a remarkable person." Cassandra remained silent. Media representatives were stationed outside her office close to South Park. Her assistant denied them access. Respectfully but assertively, she stated that she was not prepared to release a statement. Le Mistral, however, issued several public statements. Initially, they released a routine message. "We are cognizant of an occurrence involving a patron and are assessing the issue internally." This statement was met with derision online. What happened? The video was clear. The woman didn't yell. She didn't make a scene. She didn't even finish her appetizer. And yet she was escorted out as if she'd caused a disturbance. The restaurant's Yelp and Google pages were inundated with one-star reviews. Apparently, racism was present. One person wrote a review. Another posted online, "Be mindful of your appearance or identity, it seems." The manager from the video, whose name eventually leaked, was Owen Lindley. He had been employed there for 3 years. Previously a hospitality manager in Naples, Florida, she was recognized for her stringent standards regarding presentation. An anonymous former employee of Le Mistral detailed an incident last year, alleging she subjected a Black couple to scrutiny, citing their shoes, Ferragamo, as a point of complaint. As controversy erupted online, Cassandra's name gained significant attention. Despite the public outcry, she remained silent. This wasn't due to fear, but rather a deliberate act of careful consideration and calculation. She had no desire for viral fame or symbolic representation. Her focus was on the long view. She had dedicated her life to creating something enduring and wouldn't allow one overbearing manager to reduce her to a trending topic. That afternoon, she finally settled at her kitchen table. Her laptop was open, and she read silently. She avoided checking the comments section and disregarded any memes. Instead, she focused on a single item, an email from a man she hadn't heard from in years. It read, "Cass, saw the video. You navigated the situation, as you always do, with quiet strength. Should you wish to take action regarding this matter, I am available to assist." The document was signed. Harlan Desmond, managing partner, Desmond and Klein Civil Rights Law. She studied the name for a moment. Then, a smile touched her lips. Because now, she was not alone. Many who viewed that video perceived grace and composure. However, those who had grown up with Cassandra Belton would understand the source of that grace and recognize that it had not been easily attained. Cassandra was raised in Southfield, Michigan, just outside of Detroit. She was raised by her mother, a retired elementary school teacher, and her father, who worked for 35 years at a Chrysler plant. Her parents emphasized listening over silence and instilled in her the understanding that calmness is a strategic tool, particularly for a Black woman navigating a world shaped by assumptions. Growing up, she observed her mother skillfully correcting others with a smile and her father successfully resolving disagreements without raising his voice. From these experiences, she developed the ability to carefully consider her words. She understood the value of choosing opportune times and allowing others to display their anxiety before revealing her own. By age 25, Cassandra had obtained her real estate license and was selling homes during her breaks at her banking job. Initially, she focused on smaller, more affordable properties, modest starter homes, often requiring renovation and offering future possibilities. People developed trust in her. She avoided exaggeration and never made misleading claims. Instead, she communicated honestly in a composed manner and consistently maintained her presence. Among her early clients was a recently divorced woman, trying to buy her first home on a single income. Cassandra remembered her vividly because the woman broke down, crying in her office after closing. "You were the first person who didn't treat me like a mistake," she said. Those moments stuck with her more than the commission checks ever did. So by the time she sat at her kitchen table in Charlotte, reading Harlan Desmond's email, Cassandra wasn't thinking about revenge. She considered how many individuals wouldn't have responded to the restaurant manager's demeanor as she did, and how many wouldn't have had the advantage of a stranger documenting the incident. Harlan was more than a lawyer. They had been classmates at Michigan State. He had been outspoken then, full of passion and protest signs. She was more reserved, more deliberate, but they held mutual respect for one another. And despite drifting apart over the years, she had continued to follow his career. Civil rights cases in Oakland, police discrimination suits in Tallahassee. He didn't employ a flamboyant courtroom style, but he was remarkably astute. She selected the reply button. Her message was concise. "Let's talk. Tomorrow." The following morning, they convened at a tranquil cafe in Dilworth. Cassandra wore the same white tee and jeans as she did at Le Mistral, as if she was conveying a message, but one only a select few would understand. Harlan was already present, black coffee in hand, eyes surveying the room. He rose as she entered. He made no comment about the video or the headlines. Instead, he gestured towards the seat opposite him. "So," he began, "tell me what you want." She paused briefly before responding, "I want change, but I want it to affect them negatively." He acknowledged her with a nod. "Financial, legal, reputational, everything," she confirmed. He smiled, but it wasn't arrogant. Then she suggested, "Let's start with the company that owns the building. If they're leasing to Le Mistral, they're responsible for what occurs on that property." Cassandra moved closer. "Let me investigate the manager," he stated. "However, yes, there are potential courses of action. Your removal from the business establishment at Giovanni's did not appear to violate policy. If the issue was related to attire, that's a matter of opinion. If it concerned anything else, that's a civil matter." Cassandra took a sip of her tea and inquired, "What about pursuing options beyond simply filing a claim? Do you mean involving the press?" He asked. "No," she replied. "I mean initiating a discussion, perhaps a meeting, something they wouldn't anticipate." He raised his eyebrows. "A formal meeting? With me? And several others?" "Who are these others?" she asked, a faint smile playing on her lips. "People who understand precisely what it's like to be me, and a few who don't, but need to." He hesitated. "Are you certain?" "I'm finished being considerate to safeguard other people's feelings," she stated. They were at ease when they caused me humiliation, and now she was finished prioritizing other people's comfort at her own expense. The following afternoon, lunchtime proceeded with its typical cadence at Le Mistral. Waiters moved silently between tables, carrying trays of sparkling water and pan-seared halibut. The dining room was filled with the sounds of clinking silverware and quiet conversations. Owen Lindley, the manager, stood behind the host's stand, his posture rigid, his eyes scanning every corner as if anticipating something, though he couldn't say what. Then, a black Cadillac Escalade arrived in front of the restaurant, its windows darkly tinted, reflecting the sidewalk. Initially, no one noticed. This was a place accustomed to seeing high-end cars coming and going. However, the valet paused. As the back door opened, the air seemed to shift subtly. Cassandra Belton emerged first. Her attire mirrored the previous days: white tee, jeans, and suede flats. However, she now wore a long beige trench coat over her clothing. She moved with the quiet certainty of someone who no longer felt the need to prove anything. Following her, 3 more people exited the vehicle. Harlan Desmond, holding a briefcase. A woman in her 60s with thick silver braids and a serious expression. Dr. Renee Darnell, sociology professor and longtime advocate for racial equity in public spaces, was also present. And last, Andre Weiss, regional director for a high-profile real estate investment group, arrived, sharply dressed in navy slacks and a linen shirt. He had no interest in speaking to the press. His firm owned the building Le Mistral rented. Inside, Owen observed the scene from behind the glass doors, his face paling. He turned to his assistant manager and quietly mentioned needing to make a call. However, the opportunity had passed. Cassandra entered the front door without acknowledging anyone, as if she belonged there. This visit wasn't for a meal. She was there to speak. The maitre d' was stunned. "Mom, we're expected," Cassandra stated, her voice calm yet resolute. Andre approached, gestured to the staff, and added, "Conference room, please." It was important to tell Mr. Lindley he should probably be present. The staff offered no objections. 10 minutes later, within the private upstairs room, typically used for wine tastings and corporate parties, the 5 of them gathered around a polished oak table. Water was served. The door shut. And for the first time, Owen Lindley felt somewhat insignificant. Harlan opened a slim folder and presented a printed copy of the restaurant's dress code. Thus, he began, turning the page. White t-shirts. Prohibited? Owen shifted uncomfortably. "We prefer collared shirts," Harlan repeated, "but not required." He added, "Well, it's about tone, too. Presentation. We have a standard." Harlan nodded toward Cassandra, stating, "Your client is a well-known businesswoman in this community." He continued, "No signs of intoxication. No disruptive behavior." She sat down, quietly reviewed the menu, and was removed. Owen shifted in his seat. "It wasn't personal," he said. "I didn't ask if it was personal," Cassandra said, interrupting for the first time. "I repeatedly questioned myself, wondering if I had entered the space with a different complexion. Would you have reacted identically?" A profound silence followed. Andre moved closer. "We are not simply engaged in a conversation. This constitutes a breach of the lease agreement. This restaurant functions with a non-discrimination clause stipulated within our leasing terms. You may be the manager, Mr. Lindley, but I represent the organization that owns this building, and we're evaluating your standing." Owen's mouth opened, but he remained silent. Dr. Darnell then spoke. The incident wasn't isolated. It highlighted the danger of misinterpreting quietude as vulnerability. You anticipated her absence, believing the matter would disappear. However, she didn't require loud pronouncements to be acknowledged. She simply needed to remain present long enough for others to observe you. Owen attempted to dismiss. "Look, if she desires an apology, I don't want your apology," Cassandra stated. "I want accountability, and a change in how people are treated here. Not just me. To all present." The interaction proceeded calmly, without raised voices or legal warnings. 5 individuals were fully aware of their actions, and one man abruptly understood he no longer held authority. Owen Lindley remained still, his shoulders drawn, the knot of his tie subtly pressing against his throat. He was accustomed to being in command. Generally, his voice commanded respect, appearing resolute and conclusive. However, within this room, among these people, it lacked its usual impact. It simply wasn't the same. Harlan Desmond relaxed in his chair, allowing a pause to linger. Next, he put 2 sheets of paper onto the table. Page 1, he stated, is a compilation of grievances submitted by former employees and visitors at this location during the last 18 months. Numerous entries concern dress code regulations. One specifically names you, Mr. Lindley. Owen did not take the papers. Harlan continued, pushing the second sheet across the table. This is a draft of a formal letter that could be submitted to your building's management and shared with local media. It explains how bias, whether intentional or unintentional, has been a recurring issue, not an isolated incident. Yes, Owen began. We don't expect you to apologize, Cassandra added, her voice calm. This isn't about revenge. It's about correcting a problem. Consider this an opportunity for positive change rather than a criticism. Dr. Darnell then addressed the group. We reside in a city striving to be perceived as progressive, inclusive, and globally aware. However, incidents such as this reveal underlying realities. The important aspect isn't the initial error, but the actions taken afterward. Andre Weiss, who had remained largely silent until this point, finally moved closer. The board responsible for this property will convene next week. We will be reviewing your lease. Cassandra's situation might be the one captured on video, but we will be looking at the wider context. This includes staff turnover, guest feedback, and Owen's voice faltered slightly when he finally asked, What do you want? Cassandra met his gaze. A public apology, not a generic statement from your PR firm. Your voice, your face. Take responsibility, Owen. Owen blinked. That's acceptable. Cassandra continued, I want to meet with the staff, front and back of house, not to lecture, but to talk about what hospitality really means, what dignity means. Owen nodded slowly, but Harlan raised a hand. That means a formal arrangement, not a photo op, no cameras, just people learning how not to repeat the same mistake. Finally, Cassandra added, she wanted the restaurant to fund a quarterly dining program providing complimentary culinary experiences for underserved high school students with an interest in the food industry. Both front of house and back of house positions would be included, allowing them to experience a welcoming environment where they often feel excluded. Owen hesitated. That's a significant undertaking. It's a reasonable proposal, Andre stated before Cassandra could reply. To be direct, if I had sole decision-making power, I would suggest ending the lease completely. I viewed this as a gesture of goodwill. The atmosphere changed noticeably, not due to any increase in physical weight, but because Owen finally grasped the magnitude of the situation. This wasn't centered on him personally, it concerned what he symbolized. And what Cassandra was undertaking was more than just a reaction. It was a fundamental change. He cleared his throat, then stated, Okay, I will proceed. No, Cassandra responded, her tone measured. You will initiate it. The distinction is significant. The assembly rose deliberately. Documents were gathered. The water glasses seemed half empty. The room felt strangely calm, but not empty. Something had occurred here, something shifted. As they left the conference room, a young waitress caught Cassandra's eye. She appeared to be no older than 23. The waitress remained silent, offering only a small nod of acknowledgement. It wasn't a gesture of pity, but respect. Cassandra returned a smile, just enough to signal that she recognized her presence. While the main dining room downstairs continued serving truffle risotto and wine, a change was already underway, whether the restaurant was aware or not. The restaurant's apology video was released the next morning. It was brief, lasting just under 2 minutes. The video was filmed inside Le Mistral's main dining room, with the bar visible in the background. Owen Lindley appeared standing in front of a small round table, his shoulders square, but his face visibly strained. The video utilized no dramatic lighting and avoided flashy editing. A man appeared, looking as if he hadn't rested properly in days. My name is Owen Lindley, he began, and I want to speak directly to Ms. Cassandra Belton, and to anyone who saw the video of our interaction. He spoke without a prepared text. This was evident. His delivery was occasionally halting, but these imperfections only served to strengthen his words. He confessed the truth, that he had formed a judgment based on appearance, that he responded emotionally rather than thoughtfully, that he permitted personal prejudice to supersede policy and professionalism. Then he made the unexpected declaration. I didn't perceive her. Truly. And that's the crux of the matter. The internet erupted almost instantly. Concerns arose. Was the apology sincere? Was it too delayed? A deliberate tactic? However, the most impactful element for many viewers wasn't Owen. It was Cassandra, who published a written statement 1 hour later. The statement was brief, consisting of just 4 paragraphs on her business website. There were no hashtags. It lacked a viral feel. She didn't boast. She didn't seek compassion. She simply detailed the events. This is what she requested and what the restaurant committed to providing. She specifically highlighted the new program for aspiring culinary students at Willow Creek Culinary Institute. She also expressed her gratitude to the ownership group of the Golden Spoon for collaborating with her directly. Finally, in a concluding line, she wrote, "Dignity isn't something you demand. It's something you carry. And when it's denied, you don't always need to fight to get it back. Sometimes you just need to stand still long enough for people to see it was always there." The written announcement gained traction even more rapidly than the video itself. Cassandra's inbox was overwhelmed once more. However, this time it was distinct. Local charitable organizations contacted her, seeking collaboration on the Student Dining Initiative. A restaurant group in Seattle inquired if she would address their leadership team. Even the mayor's office conveyed a discreet message, acknowledging her actions. However, not all reactions were positive. Some individuals asserted that she was exploiting the situation, either by attributing racial undertones or capitalizing on the opportunity. A commentator on a local news segment accused her of attempting to dismiss a dedicated manager. Cassandra did not respond to these accusations. Instead, she prioritized the students. The initial event occurred just 3 weeks afterward. 15 high school juniors and seniors from West Charlotte and Harding University High arrived at La Mistral after hours, accompanied by their culinary arts teachers. The staff had thoroughly cleaned the kitchen. 3 chefs generously donated their time to instruct the students on plating, preparation, and service. Cassandra remained largely quiet that evening, moving between tables and observing them slice, stir, and taste with focused expressions. One student, a girl just under 5 feet tall with purple braids and intense concentration, turned to her after trying her initial attempt at risotto and exclaimed, "I didn't even know food could taste like this." Cassandra smiled and replied, "It can. And so can opportunity." Meanwhile, Owen was not present at the restaurant that evening. Following the incident, he was transitioned away from daily operations and now holds a limited administrative position at the corporate office. This wasn't a dramatic dismissal, but rather a quiet consequence, precisely the outcome Cassandra had intended. Her aim wasn't to destroy someone's life, but to ensure they lived with a lasting reminder. That reminder now manifested as 15 eager young students, laughing and learning inside a restaurant that had once attempted to exclude someone like them. The situation seemed almost unbelievable. The very establishment that had previously rejected Cassandra due to not aligning with its perceived atmosphere was now undergoing a noticeable change, occurring one table, one lesson at a time. 2 months later, Cassandra was standing outside a quiet little cafe in Durham, North Carolina, enjoying a courte-à-deux while awaiting her lunch date. This was not a business engagement. She had taken the day off. She had driven 2 hours from Charlotte simply to clear her head and connect with an old friend. The events surrounding La Mistral were in the past for her. Largely, the video was no longer prominent on trending lists. The restaurant had recovered under a new temporary manager, and the student culinary program, it continued with another session planned for next month. Cassandra had decided she would no longer supervise it directly. It was now in the hands of the students. As she sat beneath the awning, sunlight spreading across the pavement, a young woman wearing a UNC hoodie passed by, slowed, and turned back. "Excuse me, are you Cassandra Belton?" Cassandra looked up. She nodded once. The girl offered a wide smile. "I saw your video, the one involving the restaurant. I simply wanted to express my gratitude. You presented things authentically, like a mature woman would." Cassandra laughed quietly. That's a way to describe it. No, truly. You conveyed your message without creating unnecessary drama. My aunt speaks of you as if you were Michelle Obama's older relative. They both chuckled. The girl waved goodbye, maintaining her smile. Cassandra didn't require external approval. That moment held significance, not due to vanity, but because it indicated that the appropriate individuals were observing. The next generation was noting how matters were being addressed. Subsequently, that afternoon, she entered a small bistro located across the street for lunch. The host, a man in his 20s with a nose ring and slightly frayed cuffs on his sleeves, looked up and offered her a sincere smile. "Welcome," he said. "Are you dining alone or expecting someone?" "Alone," she replied. A window seat was acceptable, ideal even. He took a menu and guided her to a booth where sunlight streamed across the table. He didn't pause. He didn't scrutinize her attire. Her outfit consisted of a simple linen shirt and cream-colored slacks. As he went to fetch her water, Cassandra surveyed the restaurant. A couple murmured quietly near the back. Two women enjoyed a dessert together. A man on his laptop typed rapidly, as if the world was about to end. It was normal, ordinary, beautiful in its simplicity. She recalled that day at Le Mistral, the shift in Owen Lindley's expression, the subtle encouragement she received, the critical commentary as well, the burden of being thrust into a pivotal moment when all she desired was lunch. She held no regrets, because that moment had shown her and reminded others that silence isn't the lack of strength. Sometimes it's the most profound kind of strength, the kind that listens, that waits, that observes, anticipating the opportune moment to act. And when it acts, it seeks no authorization. She retrieved her phone and launched her notes application. A sentence appeared at the top of a fresh page. "Don't waste your voice on noise. Save it for the echo." She remembered hearing that from her mother years ago. It wasn't about remaining silent. It was about being thoughtful. Be precise. Utilize your presence like a scalpel, not a hammer. As the waiter returned with her water and a polite, "Take your time," Cassandra smiled. She didn't need to assert herself today. She didn't need to demonstrate anything. She had already accomplished that. And in doing so, she left a lasting impact, not only on a restaurant, but on everyone who witnessed her maintain her composure without aggression, who observed the power of choosing dignity over conflict and still achieving success. That was the core understanding. Change doesn't always require a loud voice. It requires remaining steadfast until others understand the significance of silence. If this story resonated with you, please share it. Discuss it with others. If you haven't already, please subscribe. More stories like this, the quiet ones that speak loudest, are forthcoming. He summoned her to publicly shame her before his affluent guests. However, when she placed her hands on the piano, the room became utterly silent. Savannah heat operates without fairness in July. The air was dense and heavy, clinging to skin and making clothing feel burdensome. Beverly Gaines stood near the wrought iron gate of 742 Prospect Lane, a canvas bag slung over one shoulder and a subtle moment of uncertainty in her chest. It wasn't fear, it wasn't anxiety, just a brief pause. A moment of stillness before entering another person's space. She hadn't anticipated employment in a residence of that nature. Not at this point in her life. 48 years old, no children, no husband. Just a one-bedroom apartment near Chatham Square and a voice that still occasionally sang in her sleep. But when her job at the dry cleaners closed unexpectedly, Beverly understood the urgency. Rent, it wouldn't wait. Upon the agency's call inquiring about her availability for a private client cleaning, she immediately accepted before they completed their request. The Whitlow estate embodied the expected grandeur of established Southern wealth. White columns, a wraparound porch, and boxwood hedges meticulously trimmed. It was a place of such refinement that even the birds seemed to move with a subdued grace. She proceeded up the steps, rang the bell, and the door opened with almost immediate responsiveness. "You're punctual," the house manager stated, looking at her clipboard without offering a smile. That was already an improvement over the previous employee. Beverly didn't take it as a slight. She rarely did. It was necessary if you wanted to retain employment in another person's home. You smile, you nod, you blend into the surroundings. The initial weeks passed without incident. She cleaned tile, shined silver, and discovered the location of every control and concealed item. She avoided drawing attention to herself, responding only when addressed, and always using sir or mom. Mr. Whitlow paid her little regard, preoccupied with entertaining lawyers, business associates, or women in high heels, all of whom departed before breakfast. Her presence wasn't meant to be acknowledged. However, one afternoon, while dusting the second-floor hallway, she stopped near the music room. The room was unoccupied, but the grand piano stood prominently, like a centerpiece in a deserted banquet hall. An itch in her hand, akin to muscle memory, prompted her movement. She entered, closing the door softly, and settled down briefly. The keys felt smooth, not new, but carefully maintained. She played a single note, then another, and a recognizable tune emerged, a childhood melody, her mother's preferred gospel hymn. Just a few measures were played, gentle and slow. She didn't notice the approaching footsteps until the final note faded. You're aware that task isn't included in your duties, correct? Beverly abruptly stood, as if discovered in wrongdoing. Mr. Whitlow rested against the doorframe, holding a wine glass and smiling knowingly. He was a man who rarely posed a question without already possessing the answer. I'm sorry, sir, I didn't mean you play. He interjected. She glanced downward slightly. When I was young, he tilted his head, as if she'd made a comical remark. Who would have thought? And then he departed. Beverly made no further reference to the incident, deciding she had likely tested her fortune. She was unaware that that instance had already initiated something within his thoughts, something he would utilize subsequently, not to commend her, but to exhibit her. Charles Whitlow never needed to strive for charm. He carried it as a second skin, polished, rehearsed, and just artificial enough to be hazardous. At 56, he appeared precisely the Southern gentleman he feigned to be. Linen suits during the summer, costly shoes designed for standing, not walking. His smile could market falsehoods without hesitation. Beneath the outward appearance of success, a sense of decay existed that primarily concerned the staff. To the public, he presented himself as a philanthropist, organizing fundraisers for the arts, contributing to schools, and hosting annual garden parties that garnered attention in the society pages. He engaged in public appearances, shaking hands with judges and interacting with people at political events, creating the impression of a political aspiration, despite never explicitly stating his intentions. Within the house, however, Charles maintained control through ridicule. The assistance was readily available, and he valued wielding it to discomfort others. Beverly recognized this tendency from the start. He rarely shouted or raised his voice, yet possessed a remarkable ability to diminish people's sense of self without physical contact. For instance, he once inquired of the new chef if his sophisticated California training encompassed the ability to prepare acceptable grits while serving 20 guests. On another occasion, he observed a gardener stooping to retrieve a dropped rose and remarked, "Careful now, could send you back to minimum wage." No one challenged him. No one offered a correction. He was Charles Whitlow. In this town, his reputation commanded respect. Even the legal authorities didn't always question his pronouncements. Beverly attempted to avoid him, but that wasn't always feasible. He began to probe her. Initially, these were minor comments. Gaines, he stated one morning while preparing breakfast. Have you ever worn anything other than beige? Later, while enjoying bourbon on the porch. You seem very quiet. Do you ever speak, or do you simply move about like a phantom? She did not respond to his attempt at conversation. She continued working. Then one evening, as she walked through the foyer carrying polished silver, he spoke to her. Are you still playing those piano keys when no one is present? Beverly hesitated. No, sir. He smiled, appearing skeptical. That must be amusing. She departed, feeling constricted in her throat, but maintaining a steady composure. Afterward, the other staff members cautioned her concerning him. That man's a snake, muttered Harold, the groundskeeper. He feeds on weakness. Don't let him find yours. But Whitlow didn't need to dig. He already had what he wanted. 2 weeks later, invitations started going out for his summer garden party. Beverly overheard the details while changing linens upstairs. It was going to be a large event. Close to 100 guests were expected, with live jazz music and wine flown in from Napa. The staff doubled for the weekend. Every room was scrubbed spotless. Everything had to be perfect. She had experience with large-scale events. The demands didn't bother her. Provided no one focused their attention on her for too long, she could handle it. However, Whitlow had different intentions. The night preceding the party, he intercepted her in the hallway. You know, he stated, tomorrow could be your opportunity. She regarded him with confusion. He moved closer, lowering his voice. Don't be taken aback if I request you perform for the audience. Just a brief distraction. It might be enjoyable. Her stomach tightened. I would prefer not to, sir. He lifted an eyebrow. Fortunately, I wasn't seeking a request, and so the decision was made swiftly. She found no rest that night, not due to worry about humiliation, but because she understood his intentions precisely. He desired a display, and she was uncertain whether to provide it or deny it. By noon the following day, the Whitlow estate no longer resembled a home. It appeared like a performance stage. White tents were erected over the manicured lawn. Cream linen draped the tables, shimmering beneath centerpieces of fresh orchids and color lilies. Jazz musicians tuned their instruments on the terrace. Uniformed staff moved with precision, pouring wine, adjusting placements, and folding napkins with the artistry of origami. Beverly kept her head down, as was her habit. She arranged canapes, assisted in polishing stemware, and patrolled the perimeter with a tray of cucumber water and melting ice cubes. No one made eye contact with her. She didn't object. The feeling of being unseen offered comfort, a sense of security. However, her hands trembled. The source of her anxiety wasn't the piano itself. It was the underlying motive. She was certain Whitlow wasn't offering her a genuine opportunity. He was orchestrating a joke, and she was the target. As the clock reached 4 p.m., the attendees began to arrive. Real estate developers, local judges, business owners, art patrons, and women displaying polished smiles. They flowed in, embracing, laughing, enjoying drinks, and casually mentioning names. From the shade of the veranda, Beverly observed them move across the lawn as if they were born on polished marble. She fell out of place here. Not among these people. Not in this house. Not even in this city some days. But she wasn't here to fit in. She was here to serve. By 615, the band had paused, and Charles Whitlow was feeling confident. 2 glasses of red wine in and a dozen compliments later, he strolled to the center of the lawn and raised his hand. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, his voice strong enough to draw attention from everyone. Before dinner is served, I thought we'd enjoy a brief, unexpected entertainment. Beverly paused. Her tray shifted a little. Some guests applauded quietly. Others glanced around, seemingly puzzled. Whitlow proceeded, his smile constrained. It turns out one of our staff members possesses a hidden talent. Beverly? People looked over. She remained still. He waved expansively toward the open French doors leading to the music room. Someone suggested I play something, recalling I occasionally play the piano. A few laughs rippled through the room, a gentle amusement typical of those accustomed to wealth and charmed by unexpected moments. Applause and quiet whispers followed. Beverly paused, experiencing the uncomfortable feeling of deciding between declining and complying. Yet, she didn't retreat. She gave her tray to a server, dried her hands on her apron, and entered the building. The guests followed, now filled with curiosity. Within the music room, the grand piano was positioned under gentle lighting, appearing as if it had been awaiting attention all day. Beverly settled onto the bench, her posture upright, her heart racing. A profound silence descended upon the room. Charles leaned against the doorway, holding a glass, looking as confident as always. Whenever you're ready, she observed the keys. They remained still. Her fingers paused above them. The room anticipated something other than music. They expected a jest, a hesitant melody, a discordant note. A source of amusement for later, a way to diminish her. However, Beverly's musical journey didn't begin with jazz, gospel, or any extravagant style. It started with a lullaby her mother would hum, a simple sequence of just 5 notes, as gentle as a whisper. From there, she expanded upon it. Her hands moved deliberately, as if awakening something. Minor chords softened into major ones. Gospel rhythms subtly infiltrated classical phrasing. Jazz embellishments playfully highlighted each shift. The room fell silent. An awkward silence descended, not born of courtesy, but from a shared lack of words. One woman murmured, "Is this staged?" Another, her champagne flute suspended in the air, paused, forgetting to drink. Beverly remained unseeing, her playing as if transported to a different place, a sanctuary, a cherished memory. And Whitlow, still positioned near the door, had lost his smile. Not because of a thwarted scheme, but because of a sudden understanding. She hadn't been the object of ridicule. He had. There are instances in life when time seems to halt. The room, filled with costly timepieces and carefully crafted smiles, remained utterly still as Beverly Gaines infused each note with fragments of her history. Her performance wasn't intended to create an impression, nor was it directed at the mother. She played because for the initial time in several years, no one was dictating her identity. Her fingers moved confidently, not with uncertainty, but with profound, unspoken conviction. Not ostentatious, not rapid, simply genuine. Her left hand maintained the rhythm, consistently, like a quiet inhalation. Her right hand conveyed the narrative. A range of emotions resonated within the music: sorrow, defiance, and a subdued joy that constricted the chest. Even those unfamiliar with music sensed an internal resonance. The sole presence was the music itself. There are no sounds of silverware, no ringing phones, no hushed conversations. Just her, the piano, and 100 people holding their breath. In the corner, the band's saxophonist set down his drink and leaned forward, his jaw slightly parted. Across the room, a woman, visibly upset, murmured to her husband, "She's playing Duke Ellington." She then asked, "But that transition, did you notice it?" That was gospel. Beverly hadn't registered any of it. Instead, she recalled the sound of footsteps from 20 years prior, her mother pacing in their small kitchen in Tallahassee, humming while stirring beans over a low flame. She remembered the cracked metronome resting on top of her childhood piano. She recalled the tremor in her mother's hands near the end, yet she never missed a beat when playing. She recalled abandoning music the day following her mother's passing. She remembered storing it away, similar to a sweater that was outgrown, until today. Today, she allowed it to return. The concluding notes were subdued, lacking drama or spectacle, simply resonant. Like a statement finished because it felt whole, followed by silence. Not uncomfortable, not bewildered, but deeply respectful. Then applause arose. It began with a single person, an elderly man positioned at the rear, clapping deliberately, his gaze unfocused. Subsequently, another joined in. Then, the entire room rose to their feet. It wasn't driven by a sense of courtesy, but by the involuntary movement of their limbs. Beverly rose from a bench. Her hands now shook, not due to anxiety, but due to a different sensation. A feeling she hadn't experienced in years: relief. For the first time, the room regarded her not as a servant, not as an extra, but as someone who'd offered them something genuine. Someone quietly asked, "Who is she?" Beverly made no reply. She merely moved away from the piano and offered a slight nod. She didn't look at anyone and walked toward the hallway. Someone blocked her path. It was Ava Renfield, a local arts patron known for curating talent across the South. She stepped forward, stunned. "That was remarkable. Do you play professionally?" "No, ma'am," Beverly replied, lowering her eyes. "Were you trained?" Beverly paused. "A long time ago," Ava said, blinking. "Well, wherever it was, they should have built a stage around you." Others gathered. One guest asked if she taught lessons. Another offered her a card. A woman, her voice full of genuine feeling, stated, You made me feel something I haven't felt in years. Whitlow remained still, positioned close to the French doors, his smile absent. His gaze focused on Beverly, but it wasn't playful. It held something different. Could it be embarrassment? Possibly. Yet it appeared to be a pride he would never be able to acknowledge. Beverly didn't pause for his response. She had already given him more than he warranted, and retrieved something she believed she had permanently laid to rest. Outside, the party had resumed. Waiters replenished champagne flutes. The jazz band resumed playing on the terrace, but an alteration was perceptible, as if the tempo had altered. It was as if Beverly's music hadn't fully departed, but resonated within people, close to their hearts. Inside, Beverly had moved to the kitchen. She sought no fanfare. She desired no accolades. She simply needed to breathe. She rested against the counter, gazing at the floor, her apron still fastened. A few minutes elapsed. Harold, the groundskeeper, entered the room. He remained mostly silent, offering only a quiet whistle and crossing his arms. "You certainly know how to bruise a wealthy man's pride," he commented, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. Beverly managed a faint chuckle, though it didn't reflect in her eyes. "I wasn't intending to do anything," she said. "That's precisely why it was so effective," he responded. She poured herself a glass of water. Her hands had become more stable, but her heart still raced. Harold departed shortly afterward. He preferred brevity, and Beverly valued that. Shortly thereafter, Charles Whitlow entered the kitchen. She didn't acknowledge him with a turn of her head. She didn't need to. He placed his glass down with unnecessary force. "You certainly made an impact," he remarked. Beverly remained silent. "I envisioned a brief, amusing exchange," he continued. "I didn't anticipate it evolving into a performance." Still, she offered no reply. He rested against the counter next to her. "Do you know what people are discussing? I'm harboring a talent within my own home. It feels as though I'm a character in a television drama." She made contact with his eyes, a look of composure and clarity. "You didn't conceal me. You simply didn't observe." His jaw moved slightly, a single twitch. "You believe you humiliated me?" "No, sir," she replied gently. "You accomplished that entirely on your own." He looked at her for a brief moment, then turned and departed. The subsequent day, telephone calls began. A representative from the Arts Council and a local music school inquired if she would contemplate offering a master class. A former producer received an invitation from a retired colleague for lunch. The experience felt dreamlike. People who had previously ignored her now regarded her differently. Beverly, however, did not respond to most of the calls immediately. She completed her scheduled responsibilities for the week, as was her routine. This included cleaning the floors, folding the laundry, and polishing the silver. Yet, a shift was evident in her movements. She no longer seemed to be attempting to remain unnoticed. That Friday afternoon, she entered Whitlow's office and submitted her resignation. 2 weeks. There was no explanation offered. He didn't request one. He simply nodded, examined the paper for a moment longer than necessary, and responded, "Fine." She prepared to leave. "You'll be back," he called after her. "They always come back," she replied, pausing in the doorway. "Perhaps, but not to you." Beyond the window, the wind rustled the garden hedges. Visitors would arrive and depart. The staff would be changed, and the gatherings would proceed. Yet, the recollection of that afternoon would linger. The issue wasn't the piano. It was the fact that the woman he attempted to control had subtly reminded everyone she wasn't under his authority, a mark he couldn't erase. Beverly Gaines, however, didn't seek retribution. She wasn't pursuing acknowledgement. She was at long last moving towards something positive, and it wasn't Charles Whitlow's house. 2 weeks later, on a quiet Tuesday morning, Beverly Gaines exited 742 Prospect Lane for the last time. There was no elaborate farewell, no presents, and no remarks from Charles Whitlow. The only sound was the creak of the iron gate as she closed it behind her, and the sun felt pleasant on her shoulders as she walked into the street. She still held the same canvas bag she had carried that first day. But she had changed, not because of the comments from the guests, the applause, or the unexpected attention to her talent. Those things had never truly been important to her. What mattered was that she had recalled who she was. and she wouldn't allow anyone to suppress that again. Returning to her apartment, she retrieved an old box from the back of her closet. It contained yellowing sheet music, a chipped metronome, a stack of journals from her early 20s, and a photo of her mother sitting at an upright piano. Eyes closed, hands mid-chord. That night, Beverly played until the neighbors knocked on the wall. She played every song she hadn't let herself touch in years. Pieces she thought she'd forgotten came back with ease. She navigated these experiences with amusement, albeit quietly and openly. Following a week of evenings dedicated to intensive work and mornings spent in quiet thought, she arrived at a resolution. She contacted the Arts Council again, and then the music school. She even responded to a call from a woman who wished to write a profile on her for a regional magazine. One by one, she reestablished contact. Not for recognition, not for praise, but because perhaps her talent could still be of use. After 2 months had passed, Beverly was providing piano lessons twice a week at a community center in Garden City. The majority of her students were children from working-class homes, along with a few adults, women who had always desired to play, but hadn't previously had the opportunity. She was patient, direct, and kind. She never discussed Charles Whitlow, nor did she mention the party. However, information spread. Following a lesson one day, a girl named Nia, who was just under 10 years old and full of energy, glanced up from the piano keys and inquired, "Ms. Beverly, did you truly work as a maid at that large house on Prospect Lane?" Beverly smiled. "I did," she responded. "Did they require you to play music?" "No, dear," she replied softly. "They attempted to humiliate me, but I determined what they would receive." Nia seemed puzzled for a moment. Then she smiled. "You're quite well known now," Beverly laughed. "I'm simply someone who recalled her identity." It was a feeling surpassing fame. She walked home that day, her shoulders squared and her head held high. This wasn't due to arrogance, but because she no longer bore any burden. Behind her, Charles Whitlow continued to host gatherings. However, news had circulated regarding the events of that summer evening. People recalled how Beverly played, the ensuing stillness, and how a room overflowing with wealth couldn't affect a woman who had nothing to validate. Some suggested Whitlow had altered since that time. Subtly, he consumed more alcohol and smiled less. Several familiar patrons ceased their visits. However, Beverly gave no consideration to these absences. She had music to instruct, pupils to motivate, and a life that was now entirely her own. Few individuals receive an opportunity to reclaim aspects of themselves they had previously relinquished. But occasionally, if one remains silent for a sufficient duration, the world presents a chance to speak with emphasis. And Beverly utilized hers with poise. For influence isn't always embodied by the most prominent voice present. It can feel like an unexpected melody, leaving people questioning why they ever had reservations about you. If you've ever experienced being underestimated, overlooked, or told you possessed less potential than you truly do, recall Beverly Gaines. And when your opportunity arrives, embrace it as if it were destined for you. Remember to subscribe for further stories of this nature. The bank manager scrutinized her, questioned her statements, and denied her deposit. However, within minutes, a single declaration transformed the situation. "She's my mother, and I own this bank." The automatic doors of Hillstone Federal Bank opened with a hiss, allowing the late morning sun and the deliberate steps of 73-year-old Gloria Hightower to enter. She moved with a cane, not due to necessity, but because she preferred the stability it provided. Her dark green dress was neatly pressed. Her silver hair was arranged in the familiar style she's kept for decades. She held her purse in one hand, the other holding a check bearing her name. Gloria was familiar with this location. She had banked here for almost 15 years. The same branch, the same routines. She typically came in during the week, shortly after breakfast with friends at Janine's diner. However, something fell amiss today. The woman at the front desk hardly looked up when Gloria entered. Not even a greeting. That was out of the ordinary. Gloria dismissed it as insignificant. Perhaps the staff was understaffed. It was possible the young woman hadn't been taught to acknowledge older customers. She proceeded to the counter and waited calmly behind a man wearing a baseball cap. After several minutes passed, and when it was her turn, the teller, a young woman, approximately early 20s, offered a hesitant glance over Gloria's shoulder, then murmured, "One moment, please." She then went into a back room. Gloria remained standing quietly, still holding her check, still smiling gently. Shortly afterward, a tall woman wearing a light gray blazer came forward. Her features were distinct. Her blonde hair was pulled straight back, and her eyes appeared analytical rather than observant. A name tag identified her as Leslie Ryland, branch manager. "May I assist you?" Leslie asked, crossing her arms. Gloria raised the check slightly and responded, "Yes, I need to deposit this into my savings account." Leslie did not take the check. Instead, she examined it, then looked back at Gloria. "Could I see your identification, please?" Gloria readily replied, retrieving it from her purse. She presented her driver's license and the check. It originated from a retirement account payout, a standard occurrence. Nothing appeared suspicious. Leslie scrutinized the identification for an extended period, an unusually long time. She then re-examined the check. Leslie then inquired, "How did you come into possession of this?" Gloria appeared surprised. "I'm sorry," she responded. Leslie clarified, waving the check. "This check is for a significant amount. We are obligated to verify it before processing. We have encountered similar situations previously." Gloria responded, tilting her head. "I have deposited checks like this here before. There had never been a problem before." Leslie offered a strained, unconvincing smile. "Banking policies have been revised," she stated. "I'm sure you appreciate that." A gentleman seated nearby subtly adjusted his position. Gloria noticed it from her peripheral vision. The woman standing behind her made a quiet noise. Gloria sensed that someone was observing them. Gloria inhaled deeply. "Ms. Ryland, I have all my required documentation. This is my account. I have been receiving direct deposit, and I've been a customer at First National Bank for years. My name, my address, and my identification all correspond perfectly." Still, Leslie remained firm. "We still require a more thorough verification. Please come with me to the back." That's when Gloria experienced it. Not fear, not shame, something akin to offense. Not just for herself, but for every older woman who had been spoken down to. For every person who had been regarded with suspicion simply for entering a room. "I prefer to remain here," Gloria stated resolutely. Leslie moved closer, softening her tone. "Ma'am, you must cooperate, or we will have to place a hold on the funds and report potential fraud." Instances like this have occurred previously. That's when Gloria experienced a tightening in her chest. She wasn't inclined to engage in a dispute, not with an individual of this nature, not in the presence of onlookers. However, she wasn't planning to depart, so she opted to retrieve her phone. Gloria's hands moved with measured precision, steady rather than trembling, as she extracted her phone from her purse. Upon the screen illuminating, Leslie's gaze narrowed. "I am contacting my son," Gloria stated calmly, scrolling through her contacts. "He will resolve this situation." Leslie gave a humorless chuckle. "Ma'am, contacting your son won't alter procedure. We operate under established guidelines. If there's no cause for concern, there's no need for alarm." Gloria didn't respond. She simply raised the phone to her ear and moved a pace to the side, distancing herself from the counter. She was weary of being addressed, as if she lacked understanding, as if she were incapable of handling her finances. Two tellers positioned behind the glass exchanged glances. The young man at the end of the line advanced a short distance, seemingly about to speak, but then stopped. The room was quiet, punctuated only by the gentle clicking of keyboards and the quiet whir of a copier in the corner. "Hey, baby," Gloria said into the phone. "I'm at the bank. Hillstone on Meridian. They're having difficulty verifying my check again." She paused. "Yes, her name's Leslie." Leslie's jaw tightened. "Excuse me, ma'am. Sharing employee names over the phone is something we avoid." Gloria didn't acknowledge the request. Acknowledgement. "I'm feeling well, just a bit tired." Following a brief silence. "Okay, I will remain here." She disconnected the call and returned the phone to her purse. Subsequently, with the same composed demeanor, She stated, "My son is en route." Leslie folded her arms. "Ma'am, I must reiterate. Elevated voices or disruptive behavior may result in dismissal." Gloria inclined her head slightly. "Do I appear to be causing a problem?" Leslie's face reddened. She averted her gaze momentarily, then returned her attention. "I have a duty to safeguard this establishment. Improper fund verification puts the bank at risk. Do you believe I am a risk?" "I believe you're not being helpful," Leslie retorted sharply. That was the breaking point. That single word. The man standing 2 places back murmured something quietly. The woman behind Gloria moved closer and said, "She is being courteous. You are the one raising your voice." Leslie addressed them. "Please refrain from interfering. We are conducting a private transaction." "It doesn't seem very private," the woman remarked. Gloria remained silent throughout the exchange. She felt no need to dispute anything or offer explanations. She simply needed to wait. 5 minutes elapsed. Leslie moved away, feigning a check of her computer, but her gaze kept lifting, much like a dog anticipating the mail carrier. The young teller from earlier approached and murmured something into Leslie's ear. Her gaze moved towards the entrance. Then the glass doors opened once more. A man entered, dressed in a charcoal gray suit. He appeared to be in his early 40s, wearing a crisp white shirt, but without a tie. He seemed calm, yet focused, and moved with a quiet, purposeful stride. He made no visual sweep of the room, instead walking directly towards the lobby center, toward Gloria. "Hi, Mama." Gloria returned a gentle smile. "Hey, baby." Immediately, the room's atmosphere altered. The man turned to address the reception desk. "Is there an issue with my mother's account?" Leslie moved forward, hesitant about whether to extend a handshake or request identification. She opted for a formal nod instead. "This is your mother?" he asked. "Yes," he responded briefly. "My name is Grant Hightower." Leslie's mouth opened slightly. Her gaze shifted around the room, then returned to Gloria, then to Grant. "Mr. Hightower?" Grant retrieved his leather card holder and laid it on the counter. It displayed his ID, his business card, and his title, Hillstone Federal, Executive Board Chair. Leslie found herself unable to speak. For a full 10 seconds, silence filled the room. Leslie's gaze remained fixed on the card, as if expecting it to ignite. A subtle muscle spasm flickered across her cheek, the type that arises when a mind struggles to comprehend what the eyes have witnessed. Grant refrained from speaking quickly. He kept his hands clasped before him, standing composed and silent, his voice even but undeniably resolute. "I'm asking one more time," he stated. "Was there a problem with my mother's account?" Leslie hesitated, then asked, "Mr. Hightower?" "We were just following procedures. Large checks need to be verified, and I—" Grant interrupted, not loudly but sharply. "You looked her in the face and decided she wasn't credible. You questioned where the check came from. You asked how she came into possession of it. Does that sound like standard procedure?" Leslie's mouth opened again, but no words came. Her face had gone a full shade lighter. "I've reviewed those procedures myself," Grant continued. "I approved those actions last quarter. That documentation contains no instruction to question a long-standing customer while disregarding her identification. Certainly not with a public display in front of witnesses." The bank was quiet. The only sounds were the clicking of keyboards from employees appearing to work and the consistent hum of the air conditioning above. No one was willing to avert their gaze now. Gloria stood nearby, arms folded. She wasn't smiling. She didn't seem pleased. She seemed weary. "I'm truly sorry, Mr. Hightower," Leslie stated rapidly. "This is simply a misunderstanding. I didn't intend to offend anyone." "But you did," Grant countered. "You humiliated her." "I didn't." "You did," Leslie replied. Grant's voice remained even. That was what made his statement so impactful. There was no shouting, no theatrical displays, just the facts, just his presence. Leslie's voice trembled. I didn't realize she was your mother." Grant looked at her. Why would that change anything? Leslie started to speak, then stopped. "Do you understand how that sounds?" he inquired. Leslie spoke the words aloud. For the first time, Leslie genuinely observed Gloria. She truly looked. It wasn't solely embarrassment now visible on her face. There was fear. The fear of repercussions. Have a seat, Grant said, indicating the chair behind the counter. I'll handle the deposit. Leslie paused. That wasn't an invitation. Leslie turned slowly and walked toward the back, her shoes clicking hollowly against the tile. Grant approached the counter, took the check, glanced at it, and typed a few numbers into the system. The young teller observed with admiration. Here you go, he said, giving the receipt to his mother. Full deposit. Effective immediately. Gloria accepted the slip, folded it, and nodded. Thank you, baby. Are you okay? I'm fine. They paused, a mother and son in a peaceful setting. Then Gloria remarked, You didn't need to come all the way here. Grant gave her a look. Yes, I did. But you're busy. You have meetings. A board to run. He shrugged. You managed a household for 25 years with one income, for kids, and a Buick that barely started. I can spare a few minutes. She chuckled softly. You always were dramatic, he smiled. And you always were the calm one. But the moment wasn't over yet. Grant turned slowly, letting his eyes sweep the room. The customers remained present, some appearing to examine their phones, while others paused during transactions, attempting to blend into the background while still observing everything. The woman positioned behind Gloria retreated slightly, creating room for them. The man who had spoken previously offered Grant a discreet nod of acknowledgement. Grant made no direct comments to them, but he did not dismiss their presence. He understood they would retain this moment, each and every aspect, not only due to his identity, but also because of what they witnessed. A woman felt diminished until the reality arrived, formally dressed. Leslie's absence was brief. She returned with a senior associate, visibly anxious, restless, attempting a smile, but unable to manage it. The older man spoke quietly to Grant, extended an apology, then indicated the rear offices. But Grant remained still. She is well now, he stated, pointing to his mother. However, this is no longer a simple exchange. Mr. Hightower began, We absolutely recognize that, and we're taking it seriously. Ms. Ryland has been here less than a year. She's still adjusting to the... Stop, Grant interjected. Don't explain her behavior to me. That's not your job. That's hers. Leslie remained still, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She appeared to be attempting to suppress tears, or perhaps prevent herself from speaking. According to Grant, addressing the associate, the task at hand is to assess the situation within this room and grasp the implications of a valued client being subjected to treatment resembling that of a criminal, solely due to her appearance not aligning with the image of someone who owns a yacht. Grant emphasized, raising a hand, Have you ever met someone resembling my mother and considered she must be concealing something? Have you ever scrutinized a white customer depositing a check? The man visibly recoiled. That's not. Don't deceive me, Grant stated. I'm not the board chair today. I am simply a son. And what I observed this morning was a woman who instilled in me the values of honesty, patience, and respect, being questioned as if she had fabricated her own signature. Gloria eventually intervened. She said, Baby, but Grant wasn't done speaking. He stated that she could have been questioned with courtesy. She could have been spoken to privately, and any concerns explained. Instead, a public spectacle was created, and she was made to feel unwelcome. The only reason for the interruption was my appearance in a tailored jacket. A silence followed. Gloria surveyed the room, noting the expressions, some filled with shame, others with anger, still others with inspiration. She lightly touched her son's arm. Let's leave, she said quietly. Let's not say another word. He faced her, his jaw rigid, his chest tense. But then he saw it in her eyes. That familiar calm. The same calm she possessed while working 2 jobs and still preparing dinner. Amidst challenging circumstances, she demonstrated remarkable poise. He acknowledged this with a nod. All right. They proceeded toward the exit together, navigating past the tellers, the customers, and the visibly shaken manager who struggled to meet her gaze. As they prepared to leave through the doors, Grant paused. He turned, looked at Leslie, and said softly, Every customer who walks in here deserves the same respect you'd give your boss. Because you never know who they are or who raised them. They departed, but the repercussions were just beginning. As Grant and Gloria reached the sidewalk outside, his phone was already vibrating. Initially, it was his assistant, then a member of the board, and subsequently the bank's general counsel. The news had spread quicker than either of them anticipated. A customer had captured a portion of the incident on video. It was already being shared. Gloria observed him. "You won't answer that." Grant allowed it to continue ringing. "No, not at this moment." They continued walking at a slow, even pace, the sun warming Gloria's head as cars passed leisurely down Meridian Avenue. She remained silent initially. So did he. It was a moment of quiet they both required. "You don't have to rush down here," she eventually said. Grant chuckled but didn't smile. "I say that every time." He added, "I can handle myself." "I know you can," Gloria replied. She stopped before a bench and sat down. Grant remained standing close by, looking at his phone screen without unlocking it. The notifications accumulated, resembling stacked bricks. However, he wasn't prepared to construct anything from them just yet. Within the bank, Leslie Ryland remained motionless in her compact glass office. A regional manager had already contacted her. Human resources required a report before the day's end. Yet, none of that held significance for her at that moment. The image of how Grant had regarded her lingered in her mind, as if revealing a perspective that diminished her, not through disparagement, but because it highlighted the limitations of her own assessments. The subsequent morning brought forth a communication from Hillstone Federal's board. It announced the commencement of an internal investigation, alongside assurances that customers will be notified regarding adjustments to sensitivity training and customer relations policy. However, this represented merely a public statement. The truly significant developments unfolded privately. Later that week, Grant took his seat at the head of the conference table, the familiar space typically used for investment strategy and profit reports. This meeting, however, had a different purpose. "I want every manager to recertify on customer service protocol," he announced, "but not with those same corporate videos from 5 years ago. We're engaging outside instructors. I don't want lectures. I want eye contact, role play, and reflection." An older board member expressed surprise. "That's a significant change." "It should be," Grant responded. "What about the manager?" Grant hesitated. He was reluctant to dismiss Leslie, not because she didn't warrant consequences, but because he didn't want this to appear as retribution. That wasn't the upbringing his mother provided. "She is suspended," he stated eventually, "subject to review." However, his focus is on addressing the underlying cultural issues that led her to believe that kind of conduct was permissible. Later that evening, Gloria settled into her preferred chair near the window at her home. The house was quiet, punctuated only by the ticking of the old wall clock and the gentle simmering of her evening tea. Grant was settled on a couch, his tie undone, his shoes slightly loosened. "You handled it well," she said. He shrugged. "I let myself get angry." "You should have," he replied, looking up. "You're not upset," Gloria said with a wry laugh. "Darling, I've experienced far more challenging situations." She continued, "This isn't the first instance someone has attempted to make me feel like I don't belong, and it likely won't be the last." "That's the most troubling aspect," Grant stated. She took a sip of her tea, acknowledging that this wasn't a new situation. "You can't control how people treat you," Grant said, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. "Only how you respond to them." Gloria smiled. "I just dislike that you had to deal with that kind of behavior at this stage in your life." "That's the interesting thing," she replied. "The older I become, the less it affects me." What caused me pain wasn't her words. It was the fact that she believed she could speak to anyone in that manner. She paused. Perhaps now she won't. Despite the difficulties, a positive outcome eventually emerged. The subsequent week, Gloria revisited the bank. She wore the same shoes and carried the same purse, but her demeanor had changed. Upon entering, every employee behind the counter visibly adjusted. The newly appointed temporary manager, Denise Alvarez, a woman with a quiet voice, approached the desk to greet her directly. "Miss Hightower," she said kindly, "we are pleased to see you." Gloria offered a slight smile. "I'm simply here to withdraw some funds." "Certainly. I will assist you myself." As they walked toward the counter, Gloria observed that the posters on the wall had been updated. The advertisements for loans and savings plans remained, but new posters, a series titled Respect is Standard, now hung near the front. Each featured portraits of real customers from the local community, all sharing the same tagline. We see you. We serve you. We respect you. It wasn't a complete solution, but it was a beginning. Denise processed her withdrawal, demonstrating patience and clarity. Straightforward and professional. Before her departure, Denise stated, "We're holding community meetings beginning next month. These will be listening sessions. Grant asked us to invite value customers like you. Would you be willing to speak?" Gloria expressed surprise. "You want me to deliver a speech?" The response came, "Not a speech. Simply share your story, however you prefer." Gloria considered the request. "I will attend, but I won't present anything in a misleading way." That's precisely what they wanted. She left that day not feeling entirely satisfied, but she felt acknowledged. And at her age, that carried weight. Later that evening, Gloria sat across from Grant again, this time at a quiet booth inside an old barbecue joint in Fort Worth they both liked. It smelled like hickory and cornbread, and nobody there seemed to notice what either of them did for a living. "You remember that day you got in trouble in 7th grade?" she asked suddenly, picking at her baked beans. "Which one?" The incident with Mr. Hale came to mind. "He accused you of plagiarism regarding your paper." Grant sighed. Yes, he recalled. You returned home holding that paper, visibly upset. Tears streamed down your face as you insisted you hadn't cheated. And he believed you. Yet, he still made you rewrite the entire paper. He chuckled. You said that rewriting something sometimes demonstrates its originality. She affirmed exactly. Grant turned to her. "But that's what happened?" Gloria replied negatively. It seemed this occasion required assistance from another. He paused, allowing the statement to resonate. Then she added, "I didn't raise you to be rich, Grant. I raised you to be right." He glanced at her across the table, a palpable feeling just below the surface. "I know," he responded. "And sometimes," she continued, "doing the right thing means you forfeit ease. You enter spaces that aren't welcoming. You voice your thoughts when silence would be simpler. And you visit the bank even when it feels demeaning. No matter the circumstance, it impacts those who care." He blinked once, twice, then smiled. You really should speak at that meeting," she said. "Oh, I will," Gloria replied. "But I'm bringing my purse, my cane, and my full voice. No softening at this time." Grant laughed. "You never softened it. You just made it sound kind." She grinned, then picked up her napkin and dabbed the corner of her mouth. "Kind doesn't mean quiet." The situation didn't conclude there, as Gloria had further remarks. A community meeting took place 3 weeks later within a simple civic center located just off Lancaster Avenue. There were no special decorations and no filming crews were present. Instead, attendees found folding chairs, a podium, and a hand-painted sign that read, "Listening Circle, Hillstone Federal Bank." Upon Gloria's arrival, the room was already half full, comprising both bank staff and customers. The gathering included older folks, young professionals, small business owners, and a few individuals she didn't recognize, presumably there to observe or report. She wore a cobalt blue blouse that highlighted the silver in her hair. She avoided flashy jewelry, opting for her usual pearl earrings, the same pair she wore to her granddaughter's graduation. Upon her arrival, the conversation quieted. People turned and heads lifted. Grant was seated near the front, but remained seated. He understood his mother didn't require an escort. Not on this day. When it was Gloria's time to address the gathering, she didn't immediately move to the podium. Instead, she positioned herself just beside it, close enough to be easily heard, but maintaining enough distance to make eye contact with everyone present without unnecessary ceremony. The room fell silent. She cleared her throat. "I'm Gloria Hightower. I'm a retired school nurse. I've resided here for more than 40 years. And I'm a client of Hillstone Federal for almost 15 years. There were some nods, some quiet acknowledgments. I am here today because I was asked to recount my experience. However, this extends beyond what occurred that morning at the bank. That portion is straightforward. I experienced disrespectful treatment. I was questioned regarding a check bearing my name. I was made to feel out of place. This wasn't due to anything I said, nor was it due to anything I did. It was solely based on my appearance. Her voice remained steady. It didn't waver, but it resonated low, full, and unwavering. Initially, I wasn't angry. I felt pain. I was certain I had committed no wrongdoing. Nevertheless, someone deemed me questionable. Someone decided my dignity could be compromised. She paused, allowing those words to resonate. I intended to remain silent, simply contacting my son and waiting calmly. However, I came to understand something later. People rely on silence when they behave in such a manner. They depend on our courtesy, our tolerance, our weariness. But occasionally, the most honorable course of action is to object. A hush fell over the room. My intention isn't to damage anyone's professional standing. This isn't about retribution. It's about achieving change. Not for my benefit. I am 73 years old and possess a sufficient understanding of the world. But for the individual who next enters a bank with trust and departs feeling diminished. A man positioned towards the rear dabbed at his eye. A woman seated across the aisle gripped her notepad without putting pen to paper. Gloria rested her hands in her lap. We reside in a nation that frequently discusses principles of equity, regarding values, regarding treating everyone equally. But those ideas hold no substance unless they manifest in everyday interactions. At the checkout, during phone calls, in the way we address someone who appears different. She glanced at Grant briefly. He offered no smile. He offered no nod. He simply observed her the way one observes a fire that warms and humbles simultaneously. "Thank you for listening," she said, then stepped back without fanfare. The room did not erupt in applause. It did not require it. A few hands clapped gently. A few heads bowed. But what lingered was heavier than noise. It was reflection. After the meeting, people lined up, not for handshakes or photos, but to talk, to share. One woman said she'd experienced the same thing at a different branch. A young man said it reminded him of the way his grandmother used to be followed around stores. And the bank staff, well, most of them just said thank you, with eyes that conveyed more than their words. That night, while Gloria sat in her kitchen with tea in hand, Grant texted her, "You were incredible." She responded slowly, "They'll remember that." She continued, "I didn't do it to be remembered. I did it so they remember each other."